recent years, you know, as soon as you say commodities, you instantly hear about Jim Rogers. What many of you forget, Mr. Rogers has been investing in stocks and bonds and currencies for a long, long time, and you know, was one of the first pioneers of hedge funds before most of you had even ever heard what a hedge fund is. So it's not just necessarily experience on commodities. I'll pass it over to Jim Rogers. You can have a great time.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. The UK is one of my favorite countries. Vince mentioned that I was educated here. This is the first place I ever got into the Guinness Book of Records. I got married in the UK, so I have many fond memories of the marriages still exist, by the way. So he's had a very good time. He puts together some very interesting groups, some very interesting crowds, and some very interesting questions, so I'm extremely pleased to be here. I cannot do what Vince does. He's a short-term trader. I, unfortunately, am a longer-term kind of person, but if you can combine what he does with what I do, my goodness, you'll be extremely successful, and maybe we'll all come to work for you someday in the future. The first thing we've got to understand, it's starting to make the press to some extent. Everybody seems to know that something's going on in China, but most people don't really quite fully understand the depth and breadth of what's happening in China, including most people in China. But China, in my view, is the next great country in the world. China is going to dominate the 21st century. The 19th century was the century of the UK. The 20th century was the century of the US. The 21st century is going to be the century of China, whether we like it or not. There's certainly a lot of people in the West who don't like that concept, but it's happening. It is changing. It has already changed the world, and it's going to change the world even more dramatically in the rest of this century. Look at that map, and you will see that the largest creditor nations in the world are all in Asia. China, Korea, Japan, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore, India, they're all in Asia now. That's where the assets are. You know who the debtors are, and you know where the debtors are. They're not in Asia. Now, throughout history, you have never seen people say, look at all those debtors over there. Why don't we go over there and join those debtors? What you've had throughout history is people said, look at all that money. Look at all those assets over there. Why don't we go join those assets? Well, that's what's happening. The assets are in Asia now, and that's continuing. You need to understand this major shift which is taking place because it is affecting us all, and it's going to have enormous ramifications. It's not just Greece which has got trouble. There are many countries in the West which have troubles, and there are going to be more coming along. And so far, the countries which are coming through all this the best are all in Asia. So whether it's the currencies or the stock markets or the bonds or just living there or trading there or working there or selling to them, that is where the future is going to develop as far as I'm concerned. Now, while we're talking about the future and these changes which are taking place, we need to talk about currencies, especially the US dollar. The US dollar has been and is still the world's reserve currency. It's the world's medium of exchange. As you all know, as recently as 1987, the United States was a creditor nation. Now the United States is the largest debtor nation in the world. But not only is the United States the largest debtor in the world right now, the United States is the largest debtor nation in the history of the world. There has never been a country which has gotten itself so deeply in debt. And this has happened in just, 23 years. It's gone from being a creditor nation to the largest debtor nation in the history of the world. So you can see the kind of profound change which is taking place. Some of you will have read about or might even remember when the pound sterling was the world's reserve currency and the world's medium of exchange. That changed. And as you know, many people lost fortunes because they were not aware of what was going on. Other people made fortunes because they could see the historic change which was taking place and understood the significance. You need to understand this now. We're in another period of historic change. and the US dollar is going to be a greatly debased and devalued currency. I mean, if you buy something, and say 5 years later it's up 15 times, and you sell it, boy, then you're thinking you're the smartest guy in town. You know, this is so easy. I'm going to be a genius investor. Wow. That's when we're all cocky and think we know what we're doing, and that's a dangerous time. That's when we're all looking around to find something else, and we want to quick jump in and do something else. That's the best time of all to do nothing. That's when you really should go to the beach, so you're not so cocky, because that's
anyway,
when
thank you very much for your time. It's great to see you again. I know you've got a plane.
I have to say, when I first spoke to Vince about it, I was one of those that was probably in two minds, and now I've come. I look forward to the next one, whatever that may be. Basically, it's simple. I think the hard thing is actually the psychology part, and actually doing less and not over trading, and that's something that I hope to take away from this.
You know, it's going to help me enormously, I hope. So I think without today, I would be setting off like a blind man, and now I feel as if, you know, I can really make some progress and work on the advice I've been given. Don't sweat the small losses, and the 80-20 rule, really, really important. You know, you get most of your profits from 20% of your trades, so do the research, invest for the long term, and if it's not working, get out of it. I think he's patient. I think he's really, really intelligent in the way that he looks at the world. He doesn't seem to ride themes that everybody wants to ride. He's selective, he's confident in his own judgment, and he looks at it from the perspective of the end user, as in he understands what people want, what they'll need in the future, and the key markets to be in at any one time.
I was eagerly looking forward to this. I had already signed up for the manuals and the CDs. But today's lot, much more expansive, greater explanations, and backed up by the two experts. It was a wonderful experience, very well worthwhile. He covers the breadth. He manages to embrace every element of investing, explains it in a relatively easy way so that they relate to one another. I think that's why he's so successful. It isn't just concentrating on stocks or shares in a company or just commodities, but it covers the entire range and explains how they relate to one another, so far as one's investment portfolio is concerned. That's what I find, at least. I'm very, very satisfied with, and I look forward to going back to Dublin next week and perhaps doing it properly.
It's a wonderful event. It's a pleasure to be here and obviously meet the likes of Jim Rogers and Mark Farber. For an average bloke like myself, just to meet these guys that are always on Bloomberg and so forth is a privilege. Their wealth of knowledge is obviously fantastic and across so many different markets, so it really doesn't matter whether you're 20 odd like I am, 50, 60, there's something for everyone basically. Be able to trade forex, commodities, stocks, bonds, whatever it is in the same system just makes everything a lot more easier and lifestyle a lot nicer.
What, are you making lots of money?
Yes, it's doing very nicely. I'm fortunate enough not to have ever worked after uni, so it's been I saw it since 2004, so I'm to do it again now and to live the life I like. It's fantastic. So.
My goodness, congratulations.
Thank you very much.